Good morning and welcome to today's Bureau of Household Goods and Services Advisory Council meeting. This is the moderator of today's meeting. Before we get started, I would like to remind council members and staff who are not speaking to mute their microphones. If I detect noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will provide a brief friendly reminder or simply mute the microphone. There are members of the public in the audience and meeting minutes are being taken, so I ask all members and staff to please identify yourself before speaking. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the advisory council chair reaches a point in the agenda which public comment is appropriate, public comment will be requested. At the direction of the committee, I will turn on and announce the opening of the Q&A feature. To members of the public, to indicate that you would like to make a comment, click on the icon, which is the question mark within the square located in the lower right portion of your screen, and type that you would like to make a public comment. Each time we open for public comment, the reference for how to request public comment will be displayed. All items will be addressed in the order that they are received, and all members of the public will be provided 3 minutes and given a 15-second warning. Thank you, and I now turn it over to Acting Chief Yafana Lamar.
Thank you, Brittany. Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Bureau of Household Goods and Services First Advisory Council meeting of 2021. My name is Yafana Lamar. I am normally one of the policy managers for the Bureau, but I am currently filling in as acting chief on a very temporary basis. Normally, we would go into safety precautions for the room, but pursuant to Governor Newsom's executive order dated March 1st, 2020, neither a public nor teleconference location is provided, so all attendees are online and we can skip to introductions and roll call of advisory council members. Is Pascal Benyamini on the call?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Bert Grimes?
Yes, good morning, Fauna.
Good morning, Bert. Don Lucas?
Hi, good morning.
Hi. Dan Rhodes?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Toby Taylor?
Yes, good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. James Gorelli let us know he will not be able to participate. Is Chris Higdon on the line? Okay, Steve McDaniel? Heidi Sanborn?
Here, good morning.
Hi, Heidi. And Steve Whiteycamp.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you all the advisory council members for continuing to accommodate the many changes in the meeting format over the past year. We appreciate you going with however we have to do it at the time. And we look forward to meeting all the new members in person, hopefully someday soon. With that, we'll go into the second agenda item, which is public comment on items not on the agenda. So if there are any public members who would like to bring something to the Bureau's attention or to publicly state something in our meeting, or even advisory council members, this would be your time to do that.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to request a public comment, please follow the instructions displayed on the screen. You will click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand portion of the screen and type, "I would like to make a public comment." Again, all requests will be addressed in the order they are received. You will be provided 3 minutes and given a 15-second warning. I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, we have received no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the next agenda item. We have Carrie Holmes from the Department of Consumer Affairs. She's the Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. She is going to give us an update from the department. Carrie?
Good morning, Advisory Council members and Ms. Lamar. I'm Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for inviting me to provide an update to the Council. By way of introduction, I was appointed by Governor Newsom to serve as the Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations on June 1st, 2020. I most recently came from the Senate, where I was the Legislative Director for Senator Jim Bell. Before my time in the legislature, I served at the Secretary of State's office as Assistant Deputy. I've always been passionate about consumer protection, and I'm very happy to be here at DCA working with the boards and bureaus. As you may know, I'm part of a new team at DCA, led by Director Kimberly Kirkmeyer. Most recently, on January 12th, Governor Newsom appointed Monica Vargas as Deputy Director of Communications at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Monica has been an information officer at the Governor's Office of Emergency Services since 2015. She was also an information officer at DCA before, and she rejoined us last month and hit the ground running. On February 2nd, Governor Newsom appointed Sarah Murillo as Deputy Director of Administrative Services at DCA. Ms. Murillo has gained a wide range of experience in nearly 20 years of service to Californians in various state departments, including California Complete Count Census 2020. Ms. Murillo comes to DCA with a skill set that makes her well-suited to support all the entities within our department. Her appointment fills a final vacancy in DCA's executive office, and we are so pleased that she has joined us. With her executive team in place, Director Kirkmeyer is able to invest even more time in her top priorities at DCA. One priority is regulations, improving timelines and transparency. DCA's regulations unit was created by DCA Legal to directly assist boards and bureaus with regulations packages. The unit continues to make improvements to make the regulations process more efficient and transparent. Another top priority for DCA is effective and efficient investigations. We understand how important investigation timelines are, and the director has made this a priority. DCA executive leadership brought in an individual who is very familiar with the investigative process to work with the executive and division of investigation teams to identify ways to increase efficiency, decrease investigative timeframes, and improve the quality of investigations. Here in Board and Bureau Relations, my priority is supporting the Bureau's executive team, along with all board, committee, and council members. Board and Bureau serves as point of contact between the boards and bureaus and the DCA Director, Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, and the Governor's Office. We provide training and support, as well as attending board and council meetings and assisting with appointments. A reminder for council members, 2021 is a mandatory sexual harassment and prevention training year. This means all employees and board and council members are required to complete the training during the year, even if you took it last year. I'd like to acknowledge that COVID-19 continues to impact every aspect of our work. DCA offices remain open with preventative measures to safeguard the health and safety of our employees and visitors. DCA and its boards and bureaus are maximizing telework to reduce risk for all employees. Public health measures such as distancing, face covering, and frequent hand washing are required for employees who cannot telework. I encourage everyone to visit DCA's COVID-19 webpage, which is frequently updated with information including vaccine distribution, economic relief for licensees and small businesses, and latest public health guidance. I would like to thank the Bureau staff for all of their hard work keeping their employees and visitors safe during this time. I look forward to getting to know you better. In the meantime, if you have any questions or need anything from DCA, please don't hesitate to reach out. Board and Bureau Relations is here to help. Thank you again for inviting me to your meeting. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Carrie. I didn't tell you I was going to mention this, but I wanted to let the Advisory Council know. Carrie Holmes is very familiar with the Bureau. She worked tirelessly on the first iteration of the Juvenile Products Flame Retardant Chemical Content Bill. So she is very familiar with the Bureau, and we were very happy that she was appointed to the DCA executive team. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, and I was happy to reconnect. That was very dear to my heart.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Holmes? None? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the operations update. We received a request from an advisory council member to cover how COVID has impacted the field, but I wanted to talk about some general Bureau responses to COVID, and then when we get into the statistical overviews, each unit will talk about their specific, how COVID has affected their specific unit. So generally for the Bureau, employee and consumer safety is our highest concern. In consideration of health and safety, we operate with limited staff in the building. We try to be at 75% teleworking when possible, but of course, we bring in some when we need in order to meet operational needs. This is to reduce potential exposure and complies with the governor's office mandate. In addition, we follow CDC guidelines such as wearing masks and observing social distancing. We also have a routine cleaning schedule several times a day, and we limit in-person meetings, as you can see by this WebEx meeting. To allow work to continue with limited staff in the building, we have a rotation of in-office and teleworking staff. We have reassigned equipment to those who need it to telework or assign work that can be done from home to make sure that all of our operational needs continue to be met. We are still answering telephones and cannot take work home that contains confidential information, but our managers and staff have become very creative in juggling work and making sure the work of the Bureau is still accomplished on time. We are proud of our staff's patience in handling the many changes while still meeting the demands of their jobs. Are there any questions about the Bureau's response to COVID generally? Okay, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, operations update from the budget office. We have Heather Robinson, our budget analyst at DCA.
Good morning. Today, I'm going to be going over your fund conditions based on fiscal month 7 expenditure and revenue reports. For those of you who may be unfamiliar, I'll go over what a fund condition is. A fund condition is a document that provides an overview of the status of the Board of Bureau's special fund. This document displays multiple fiscal years and provides past year actuals, current year authorized, and budget year +1 estimated revenues, expenditures, and fund balances. This document is used to monitor and project the future health of the Bureau's fund and to determine if the fund's balance is growing or declining. Using this tool, the Bureau can determine when a fee increase may be needed to address a declining fund balance, or if fees can be lowered in the rare case that a fund balance is growing beyond statutorily mandated limits. A commonly used metric to monitor a fund's health is months in reserve. This metric takes the ending fund balance for a specific fiscal year and compares it to the fund's total authorized expenditures, providing total months a fund could sustain operations assuming no additional revenue was collected. For example, a fund with 12 months in reserve could sustain operations for a full year without any revenue being collected. So first, we're going to jump into Fund 325, Electronic Appliance Repair. Currently, we are projecting $3,381,000 in revenue and $2,715,000 in expenditures, leaving the fund balance leaving the fund with 16.1 months in reserve. This fund is healthy. I don't see any issues at this time. Any questions on this one? Okay, we'll move on to Fund 752, Home Furnishings and Thermal Insulation. Revenue is projected at $5,755,000. Expenditures are at $4,188,000 with a months in reserve of 12.5. For this one, for this one, I just wanted to point out that line 10, other regulatory license and permits. For this one, the revenue was projected to come in at $1,783,000. The amount should actually be $1,030,000. This was due to an accounting error which pulled revenue from a different source. It's currently being fixed and should show correctly on the next available revenue report. With this change, it leaves the fund at 11.1 months in reserve, which is still healthy. Any questions on this one? Okay, and lastly, Fund 3315, Household Movers. Our revenue is projected to come in at $3,445,000 and $2,049,000 in expenditures, putting the months in reserve at 24.8. So all three funds look healthy. We don't see any issues at this time. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, hi, this is Don Lucas. I was just wondering if the pandemic has caused any significant changes either in the revenue or the expenses in any part of your operations.
Well, one thing specifically, for the general fund loans, as directed by CS 3.90 of the 2020 Budget Act, the state employee bargaining units and the state agreed to a 2020 personal leave program that would reduce each employee's salary by approximately 9.23% in exchange for 2 PLP days a month. The savings estimated to be generated from this program was reduced from each program's current budget. CS 3.92 further authorized the Department of Finance to transfer amounts from each special fund to the general fund as a loan in the amount equal to the budget reduction effectuated by CS 3.90. These loans would be repaid at any point in which the originating fund required the money. As an example, if the program's budget was reduced by $100,000 pursuant to CS 3.90, Finance could authorize a loan from the program's special fund to the general fund for an amount equal to $100,000. In these three funds cases, they took that full amount. So for electronic appliance repair, it was $208,000. For home furnishings, it was $321,000, and household movers, it was $129,000, which you can see line 22, I believe. Any other questions?
Yes, Heather. Steve Whiteycamp, California Moving and Storage Association. As you mentioned, the moving budget has a very healthy reserve of 24 months. At what point do you start to look at that as being unreasonably large?
I have my manager should be on here too. She should be able to answer that for you. Brittany, can you promote Karen Munoz to a participant?
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Good morning.
Hi, my name is Karen Munoz. I'm the budget manager, as Heather had mentioned. You brought up a good point on home furniture or household movers fund as being higher than the normal reserve, and most if not all boards and bureaus within the department does have a 24-month reserve amount. Like if it goes above 24 months in, yes, we definitely look at that, and that is a possibility of reducing fees to stay within the 24 months or less. However, those 24 months is identified in future fiscal years, and so we will just continue to monitor the funds, because if based on projections, it's not nothing that is specific, so it doesn't identify that you are absolutely at that amount, but it is something that we will continually monitor and have conversations with the bureau in the future to make sure we monitor that and reduce those if we need to. This is just projecting that the revenues continue to come in as it is. And we, with that, we'll also keep in mind the current general fund loan that is out on household movers. That just probably would not be repaid anytime soon.
Well, thank you, Karen. And just go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, hi, this is Fauna. I just wanted to add that we are required by the Household Movers Act to perform a fee study to determine if our fees are appropriate. So if they need to be changed, that it will show in that report.
Very good. My question was not asking for any reduction. We're very pleased with the work of the team at the Bureau and are hopeful that even more activity will transpire, which will add additional cost. Just thinking of that number, it's important for us to be alert to that.
Any other questions for the budget office?
This is Heidi. I have a question. Following up on commission, well, I should say I'm Heidi Sanborn. I'm representing the public on the commission. And I guess my father was one of the people who was defrauded from a mover when he moved from Michigan a few years ago. And his stuff was actually held hostage. We could not get it back. And they got a lot more money. And it really, as a consumer, I just want to say that it's a very important program. And if there's money in there that could be used to ensure that we're doing more in this area to protect the consumers from abuse from the actors who are not good in the field. I just want to put that out there because there's a lot of people who have suffered a lot and a lot of stress from these situations. And so if there is extra money and there's ways to use it effectively to go get those people who are not operating under the law, then that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. We fully support the efforts of the Bureau. They've been the most effective group in the country in going after hostage shipments. These shipments impact not only consumers, but legitimate movers, which are being defrauded from even having the opportunity to provide service to people like your family. So we are fully in support of that.
Yeah, I know you are. It's a shame to see it happen and to reflect on others who are the good operators. My father signed that contract before I knew it, and he didn't read the fine print, and he got taken, and he's not alone. So thanks for all your work in this area. I really appreciate it.
Thank you both. Are there any more questions or comments for Heather Robinson or Karen Munoz? Okay, so thank you, DCA Budget Office. We appreciate you coming to all these meetings and presenting. Next on the agenda is the operations update for personnel. We have Jacqueline Castro, who is our licensing manager, pulling double duty as our HR unit while we have vacancies. So I'm going to turn this over to her.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Castro, and I am the licensing human resource manager with the Bureau. We have quite a bit to report regarding personnel updates since the last advisory council meeting. We have a few employees who have retired recently. Michelle Linton Shedd, who was an associate governmental program analyst with the licensing unit. We also have Rajinder Sandhu, who was an environmental scientist with the lab unit, and Sue Florentine, who is a special investigator with the investigations unit. The Bureau has filled a number of vacancies. Within the investigations unit, we have hired 4 special investigators: Eric Stevens, Joseph May, Destiny Wells, and Raleigh Jacoby. Raleigh was promoted from field investigator to SI. We also hired a supervising special investigator 2, Rick Volucci. Rick came from the Contractor State License Board, and we're excited to have him on board. In the compliance unit, we hired 1 staff service analyst that conducts complaint investigations, Abda Chechi. Currently, the Bureau has a personnel vacancy rate of 23% and is working diligently to fill these positions. We are hiring based on priority, as we are only authorized a limited amount of staff in the building with COVID-19. The following positions are currently in the works: an environmental scientist for the lab unit, a special investigator for SoCal, one associate government program analyst for the administrative unit, and one associate governmental program analyst for the compliance unit. Thank you so much. That concludes my personnel update. Are there any questions?
Yeah, this is Bert Grimes. Quite a while ago, the investigators were going to be cross-trained between the different departments and areas. Are they cross-trained now? In other words, if you go into a furniture store, you can do the furniture, and you can do the electronics, and you can do the trucks, movers out the back end. I don't know if
Hi, Bert. Hi, Bert. This is Yafana Lamar. Yes, the special investigators are able to handle inspections, investigations for all 3 practice acts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Looks like none. Thank you, Jacqueline. I want to point out to advisory council members that Rick Vellucci is listening to this meeting, and I encourage advisory council members to reach out to him. He has an amazing resume, and he is going to greatly strengthen our enforcement of all 3 practice acts. We're excited to have him. If you would like to set up a meeting, you can reach out to him, or you can reach out to me. We would love to introduce you so we can talk about how to better serve your industries and ensure that the law-abiding businesses don't have to compete as heavily with underground economy. That's a focus of ours. So I just wanted to let you know that. Next up, we have our legislative update. We have Megan Allred. She is the Assistant Deputy Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Consumer Affairs, and we're happy to have her presenting. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Megan Allred. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director for Leg Affairs at Department of Consumer Affairs, and I've been here for about a year. So I just wanted to go through the list of bills, give you an update on where they are, and answer any questions that I can. We will kick it off with one that I'm sure you're all familiar with, AB 224 by Assemblymember Daley. This bill would exclude a motor carrier from the definition of household mover. So, and a motor carrier, as defined, provides transportation of household goods in containers or trailers where the goods are not entirely loaded or unloaded by an individual, or the goods are entirely loaded, and unloaded by an individual who's not an agent or employee of the motor carrier. So this is a repeat of last year's bill, AB 2460, which died in the Senate Business and Professions Committee. The department had concerns last year. I think we share the same concerns this year for the weakening of oversight of the industry, and just there hasn't been sufficient time to implement proper oversight to protect consumers, and we don't want to create a loophole for unlicensed activity. So actually what I found out is that they are amending this bill currently, like as we speak in Rules Committee, to add an urgency clause. So it will be enacted immediately upon passage if it makes it to passage. I don't know why it needs to be immediately amended to, or immediately enacted, but that is something that I found out they were going to do this morning. Does anybody have any questions on 224?
Not any question, but I'd like to make a comment. The California Moving and Storage Association and its membership, and even the ATA Moving and Storage Conference, oppose this bill, oppose this action. And while the sponsors of the bill may not be bad actors in and of themselves, it creates an opportunity for a lot of bad actors to take advantage of that exemption. The LSE, the limited service exclusion, which they hang their hat on, is disingenuous in this case to start with for many reasons, which we will be sharing with each legislative committee that hears this bill. But once again, we vehemently oppose AB 224.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Sure.
Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on this. It's Heidi Sanborn again from the public. So I guess I would like to understand, one, is the DCA then going to take a position on this? Does the advisory committee just advise on positions? Is there, this is, I think, my second meeting, so I just want to make sure I understand what we can and cannot do or advise on these types of bills.
So boards and bureaus can take positions on legislation. DCA as a department does not take formal positions on legislation. We can offer technical assistance when we see, glaring errors in bills or things that just cannot even be implemented. We can try to help technically correct them, but as far as positions, we don't take formal public-facing positions on legislation. But I believe that you as a bureau can do that, and I will just want to jump in if there's anything, if you took a formal position last year or going to take one this year.
So my understanding from my experience in the legislative office is that bureaus submit information to the department who takes a position on behalf of the bureau because we're considered to be a division within the department. We don't take a public position. Yes, our advisory council can advise us. We also give your office information, but we don't actually submit. We don't take a public position, and we also do not submit an analysis to the governor's office. The department does that.
Right.
So if we wanted to, would it? Oh, I'm sorry, Megan, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, I'm learning as well. Like I said, this is my first, year cycle. So I will let you know that we do definitely work with the author's office and try to work also behind the scenes with the governor's office to deal with this legislation and legislation like it, especially on behalf of the bureaus, and relay concerns, strong concerns. Like I said, this bill died last year, so hopefully it will meet the same fate this year. But I think that we have relayed concerns to the committees on this, and we do regularly talk to committee consultants and let them know kind of what the big issues are with the bills. So while we may not take a formal position on bills, like a forward-facing one, we do have ways of kind of letting them know exactly what the problems are and how concerned we are about the legislation.
Okay. So I guess I'm just wondering.
So the process is that DCA will submit an analysis and a position statement to the governor's office. It has to be approved by the governor's office before that position can be made public. Once it's made public, then DCA can testify on that position. And if the position is never approved, then once all the final votes, if the bill makes it through both houses of the legislature, then a veto or sign recommendation would be sent up by the department, and the governor can consider the bureau and through DCA's arguments.
So as far as what this commission can do, could we recommend and advise, like take votes on these bills and give you advice from our group on what we think the positions should be and why? Would that be useful and helpful?
We don't do votes because the advisory council serves in an advisory capacity, but if you have opinions, you're definitely welcome to share them with the DCA legislative office, in this case, Megan, and with me. If Megan wasn't here, I would pass this on to her office. So, if you have an opinion, this is your chance to make that known to the department.
I see. So individually, we let you know, but we don't vote as a group to give advice as a group. I see.
Correct.
Okay. So thank you for explaining all of that. I just want to make sure I got it right. Because I really am surprised that they're thinking of making this an urgency bill. I do legislation in my day job, and there seems to be a lot of things that are a lot more pressing and urgent than something like this. And I'm not sure at all why, who would be supporting this at this point in time with the amount of fraud that we do have in the system. So
Yeah.
I will certainly support your efforts in pushing back on this. I've got bills I'd love to be made urgent that I think are far more urgent than this one. So I hope this doesn't go very far. And thank you for letting us explain.
Heidi, as a sidebar, we would welcome you to join with us in this effort. We lobby hard on this bill. It is very confusing, a lot of things. Why are the Teamsters involved in this bill? For what reason? It makes absolutely no sense. The only thing is, once we pushed back hard in the Senate last year, they did pull. So we're going to push. So we'd welcome you.
We should probably talk offline.
Offline.
All right, thank you. Moving on to different, slightly less probably contentious bills. AB 652 Friedman, product safety and deals with chemicals in juvenile products. This bill would, on and after July 1st of 2023, prohibit a person and a manufacturer from selling or distributing any new, not previously owned juvenile product that contains PFAS, I'm going to call them, because the chemical names I would butcher them, at a detectable level above an unspecified amount. And it would require manufacturers to use the least toxic alternative when replacing these in juvenile products. So it's another effort to remove chemicals from juvenile products and
I will speak up. This is Heidi again. I would strongly support this bill. Those chemicals should not be anywhere, let alone in children's toys. And in my day job, we're definitely supporting that bill.
Absolutely.
For safety.
I'd like to jump in again. This is Fauna. I asked Megan to present this bill because although these requirements would not be enforced by the Bureau, meaning this bill will likely not be analyzed or a position statement submitted by the department, I wanted to bring this to industry's attention because this bill would impact the same juvenile products that are subject to AB 2998 by Assemblymember Bloom from 2018 that the Bureau that is part of the Bureau's jurisdiction. So I just wanted to bring this to industry's attention in case they are concerned. Additionally, this bill applies to bedding products that are within the Bureau's jurisdiction. So although we will not be enforcing this should this pass, this is just a bill of interest for our HUFD licensees and industry.
Yafana, could I ask a question about this bill? Because if the Bureau is not going to be involved in the measurement, or who is going to be doing the enforcement?
DTSC, sorry, the Department of Toxic Substances Control.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Welcome.
Okay, our next bill is AB 646 by Assemblymember Lowe. This is also a second-year attempt at a bill that would require a board within DCA that is posted on its website about a revoked license due to a criminal conviction to update or remove information about the revoked license should the board or bureau receive an expungement order related to the conviction. And it also permits the board or bureau to charge a $50 or amount as determined to cover the cost of updating the website. This is more of the efforts kind of on the ban the box type of efforts that they've been doing to remove kind of criminal histories and things as much as possible from licensing decisions. So in this case, it's actually not on the decision side, it's on the other side where if you have an expungement, they would either have to post that the conviction has been expunged and or remove all information relating to that conviction if you're not seeking a license or you're not licensed any longer. So there's a lot of work on the boards and bureaus to do this, and a lot of times the expungement order or notice of revocation could be in multiple places and journals and on the websites and different areas. So there's a lot of administrative work to be done in this, and I think the recommendation would just be to post the expungement order as opposed to having to remove it from everywhere. And I think that would be kind of our recommendations for this bill, but otherwise there are no other major concerns. Next up, AB 885 by Assemblymember Quirk. This bill would require meetings made available to the public through teleconference to also be observable through both audio and visual means. So anything that's like a WebEx that you can, or a teleconference meeting has to be available through visual means as well, instead of just audio.
Hi, this is fun. I have something to add that's advisory council specific. So although this bill doesn't seem like it requires much more than we do now, we are keeping in mind that once the governor's emergency state of emergency is lifted, we will go back to in-person meetings. And when we had those, there was a call-in option for those who could not attend. This would require you to be on camera if you can't attend in person. So that's why I wanted to bring this bill to the advisory council's attention.
Next up, AB 1026 by Assemblymember Smith. This is one of a group of military-related bills this year, and this specific bill would require boards and bureaus to reduce initial licensing fees for honorably discharged veterans by 50%. So applicants would be required to submit satisfactory evidence that they're an honorably discharged veteran by providing a copy of a driver's license or an ID card that says veteran on it. For the primary purpose to reduce barriers to licensure for honorably discharged veterans. So this one is a reduction of licensing fees by 50%. It doesn't necessarily say which initial licensing fees, such as separate application fees, examination fees, live scan fees. So I think clarifications need to be made to the bill to address exactly which initial licensing fees they want to be cut in half. But on the technical side, I think that's where the clarification needs to come in, and it's more of a fiscal argument for the rest of the time as to if the boards can take this and will be able to survive financially by cutting initial licensing fees depending on the population that they serve. So we go next to AB 1221. This requires continuous until canceled contracts to provide cancellation information in clear and conspicuous type on the contract. So they just really want to highlight that if this is a contract that automatically renews until you cancel it, that there's information that is provided on these contracts that specifically and conspicuously states how you go about canceling those contracts. So next, we have AB 1386 by Jordan Cunningham. Another in the military bill world, this bill would require boards and bureaus to waive initial licensing fees entirely for military spouses who hold professional licenses in other states. So if they want to come over with their spouse who's in active duty military and they hold a professional license in another state, like a nursing license or any other professional license, it would waive their initial licensing fees entirely. I think it's the same clarification as the other bill as to what the initial licensing fee is, and if that includes the other exam fees or live scan fees or anything else. But it is along the same lines as the previous military bill that we heard. So SD 586 Bradford is next up. And that one would end the assessment and collection of all remaining administrative fees imposed against people in the criminal legal system. Specific to DCA, this bill would require every ignition interlock provider to annually report to BAR the provider's fee schedule, total number of people who had income verification, number of people who received a reduction of charges, amount of reductions, total dollar information that remains unpaid related to the cost of installed ignition interlock devices. And generally, this bill is a really large overhaul of administrative fines imposed against people in the criminal legal system.
Hi, Megan, this is Fauna again. I just want to point out to our advisory council members that this bill, although it does not affect a lot of our licensees, it would allow a consumer who is not given the option of income-based pricing by IID installers to sue, and they could recover attorney fees and court costs as well. That's being added to our Practice Act, and there are many changes throughout California code that affect ignition interlock device installers. So although that affect the Bureau, this is another one like the juvenile product bill where I just wanted to bring it to industry's attention in case you haven't seen it, so that you know that it's there in case you have an opinion on it.
Good morning.
Are there?
Yeah, I raised my hand, but I don't know if I'm new on the advisory council, so I raised my hand on WebEx, but I'll go ahead and talk if it's all right with you. My name is Toby Taylor. I'm the Vice President of Regulatory Compliance for Smart Start Ignition Interlock. The ignition interlock industry has a single trade association, the Coalition of Ignition Interlock Manufacturers, that represents the ignition interlock manufacturers and speaks with a collective voice on legislative matters impacting the ignition interlock industry. The coalition is aware of this bill and are working with involved parties on the legislation. We're grateful to the Bureau for tracking and advising us of this legislation and look forward to continued updates from the Bureau on legislation affecting our industry.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the final bill in our list is SB 772, which deals with minor violations. And so this bill would require all boards and bureaus within DCA to adopt a program that allows licensees to correct minor violations before being subject to monetary penalty. Minor violations being defined as those that did not pose a serious health or safety threat, were not willful, did not occur while on probation, and are not violations that the licensee has a history of committing. And as long as the licensee corrects such violations within 30 days, they could not be assessed a fine. So there is some concern on this bill. A lot of board staff from several of the programs have indicated that the use of cite and fine is a key deterrent to incentivize complying with the rules, and that eliminating these fines would lead to less compliance. Some boards have their own abatement programs that would be eliminated and replaced with this bill. And there's also concern that many provisions of the bill are overly broad, such as what constitutes a health and safety threat. So this is an author-sponsored bill. We don't know of any of the key stakeholders. The goal is to reduce the regulatory burden on licensees and small businesses. And it's not a repeat bill that we've seen before, so we'll be interested in watching this move through committee starting on April 19th. And if there are no questions on that, then
Are
that's
there-
the list.
This is Bert Grimes. Quick question. How would that affect the Bureau and what we're doing now? As far as if it's a minor violation, we give them a chance to rectify the situation and there's no fine, or how are we handling that now? And how would we handle it if what would we decide would be a minor violation?
Right now, we have criteria in our regulations that, sorry, is someone going?
No, go ahead.
Hi, this is Yafana Lamar. We currently have in regulations criteria that informs our citations, and there are 9 criteria that includes the harm to consumer, whether they're cooperative with the Bureau, whether they become compliant, whether they make the consumer whole, and if they have a history of violations. So this would take away our ability to decide whether or not we issue a citation at all, or a fine. Whether we issue a fine would be determined by the criteria contained in this bill versus what we have established in our regulations. And it would require a history or a pattern of behavior, and it would require a licensee to be on probationary status, which is a long, lengthy process that we have to go through with the Attorney General's office in order to issue a citation for violations that are considered minor, which, this bill defines. So it would be a big change to our enforcement for all three practice acts.
Well, it would really weaken your enforcement, correct?
It appears that way, yes.
Thank you.
So yeah, and I think one of the other biggest issues with the bill is just that it's not very clear on what constitutes kind of a health and safety threat. And so for your purposes, I think it would be you wouldn't be able to define yourself what these minor violations would be. It would be kind of broadly interpreted and subject to litigation, I think, in a lot of instances, because there is no bright line as to what constitutes minor or a major violation. So I think there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of assistance technically that we'll try to provide, or at least information that we will try to relay to their staff about kind of the impacts that this would have on the boards and bureaus.
Does this bill take into consideration non-permitted entities, or is this just to those entities that are already in compliance with the regulatory scheme?
This bill would just be licensees, as far as my understanding. So they wouldn't have. So the penalties for unlicensed activity would be the same, but for licensed activity that's considered a minor violation, that's where this would kick in.
Okay.
So for those that are already within the regulatory scheme.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions for Megan? Okay, thank you for coming and presenting. It's nice to have a representative from Legislative Affairs at this again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, thanks. So we're going to move to the next agenda item, that is the statistical overview, where each of our units report statistics for their units. So we're going to start with Sue Schoof, our flammability engineer, to go over laboratory testing.
Hi, good morning. I'm Sue, laboratory engineer. I'm here to report the laboratory statistic in the third and the fourth quarters in 2020. In 2020, the lab received the 14 TB 117-2013 samples in the third quarter and the 20 in the fourth quarter. During the third quarter, 96% of completed samples passed and 4% failed the TB 117-2013 test. All 26 tested samples passed the TB 117-2013 in the fourth quarter. The lab received 5 matrices in the third quarter and 6 matrices in the fourth quarter. In the third quarter, 89% of tested matrices passed the 16 CFR 1633 and 11% failed. In the fourth quarter, 2 samples passed and 3 failed the 16 CFR 1633. We received 5 installation samples during the fourth quarter. In the third quarter, 2 samples passed and 2 failed, and 1 failed for R value and 1 failed for E84 test. During the fourth quarter, 69% of completed sample passed and 31% failed. It's also It's mainly for the R value failure, and there is one is for E84 failure. The lab evaluated the 10 batting items in the third quarter and the 4 batting products in the fourth quarter. All samples passed. The lab also reviewed the labels attached to samples. In the third quarter, 12% of the checked labels met all the requirements. 36% of them have minor deficiencies, 44% of them have moderate deficiencies, and 8% had a major failure. During the fourth quarter, 15% of the checked labels met all the requirements. 39% of them have minor deficiencies. 42% of them have moderate deficiencies, and 4% had a major failure. 71% of completed TB 117-2013 samples in the third quarter were made overseas. 25% of tested samples were made by California manufacturers, and 4% were from other states. 82% of completed TB 117-2013 samples in the fourth quarter were made overseas. 18% of tested samples were from California. 22% of completed mattress samples in the third quarter were made overseas. 33% of the mattresses were from California, and 45% of them from other states, meaning that a total of 78% of tested mattress samples were made in USA. In the fourth quarter, 70% of completed mattresses were from overseas. 83% of samples were made in California. Our lab checked the flame retardant statement on TB 117-2013 labels and found that 86% and 90% of tested samples checked no added AFR chemicals in the third and the fourth quarters, respectively. 2 samples checked added AFR chemicals box in the third quarter. 2 samples did not check any box, which were tested in the fourth quarter. In the third quarter, 1 sample passed the DTSC FR test and 1 failed. During the fourth quarter, 7 samples were cleared by DTSC. 1 manufacturer matched our FR documentation review requirements, and 1 failed in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, 2 manufacturers submitted the satisfied FR documents, and 1 did not meet our documentation requirements. The laboratory has complied with the implemented COVID responses, which include teleworking, personal leave program, social distancing, and mask requirements. So that's my lab stats updates for the last 2 quarters, third and the fourth quarter in 2020. Any questions?
Yeah, hi, Sue. This is Don. Congratulations on being able to continue testing during the pandemic, because I think it's not the easiest thing to do, because it's obvious you can't do the testing by teleconference. But I would like to bring up the failure rate on the labeling, because that seems like it's continuing to be a problem. The fact that only 12 and 15% in the third and fourth quarters completely passed. But I'm wondering if we shouldn't wait until agenda item 7, Yafana, to discuss what implications this had and whether anything should be done.
Yeah, that's. Go ahead.
Sorry, my microphone was muted. Yes, we Diana is going to address labeling requirements when she presents agenda item 7.
Great, thank you.
This is Pascal, if I may. I have one question regarding the statistics of TB 117-2013 with respect to the pass and fail, and the breakdown between where the location was of the products were received. Is there a way to break down the failure to correlate to the location from where the product was received? So, for example, on the third quarter, with the 4% fail for TV 117-2013, is there a way to know whether that fail was a product out of California or other states or overseas?
I could do that, but it's just from past, our data doesn't really show a big, difference between locations to locations from different sources, but I could do that. That's, yeah.
That would be very helpful if you could do that for for this report. There's only one fail in Q3 and no fails in Q4. But for future, that would be very helpful, and that would be the same for the labeling, with the minor and moderate violations, to the extent there's a way of breaking it down as to the location of the label. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
I think the labeling is definitely, it's even the products from overseas. A lot of the labelings were developed in the USA, so they actually, a lot of, they have importers in the United States to direct them what to put on the label. So that might not, be really to see as just as this product is made in which place. It's not a big difference there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, this is Bert Grimes. Got a question. Is there a way that we could figure out what most of our moderate violations are, and maybe we need to explain that a little bit better to the manufacturers on the website? For example, if we see a lot of them, I know the website says everything has to be at least an 1/8 of an inch high. If we find that most of them are not, is there a way we could, let the manufacturers know that that is something that we really need to work on?
Okay. Yeah, it's usually if you have any label discrepancies, and we will send a note to you, let you know what you need to improve. So for the minor, let's say if you only have a font issue, and if you just missing 1 or 2 words and not critical, and the typo or something that's minor, and you can change from a correct very easily. But if you have no percentage and you miss, some manufacturer didn't put their flammability label on that, or they totally missed one section, like they didn't put the percentage on that, or they still have the old flammability label. So that usually is like is a flag to say it's a major failure, and you will receive that. So I will encourage manufacturers, it's probably, you need to, when we send a letter to you, and just read that and what you needed to improve. Yeah, definitely. I will talk to FUNA and see what we can do better to make it clear in the future.
And also, is there a way that we could make it a little more obvious on the website, where we could send in a sample of a label for you to approve?
We just, at this time, we just don't have that many staff to really, do that. If we have a major, like a formatting, you say what kind of information you want to put on the label, you're not sure that we could, it's like to tell you, you need this info. We have examples on our website, and it's word by word, and that's on our website, and you can download that, just almost like a copy that just put your information there. So
we also have examples in our regulations. As far as sending in an example that we would post on our website, we could not post information that is that belongs to a licensee, we would have to redact that. So I don't know that that would be a good example, but we could work on something to see if that's a possibility.
Thank you.
It looks like Tom Dykstra has his hand raised.
This is the moderator, and that is a member of the public. Did you want to take public comment for this?
I don't think we can, right? The time for public comment was in agenda item 2.
I believe that's at the direction of the program.
Okay. If Mr. Dykstra has a comment on this, he can go ahead and voice that.
This is the moderator. Tom, I will be unmuting your microphone now.
Hi, this is Tom Dykstra with Hayworth. I just have a question on the major and minor infractions for the TB 117. Is the manufacturer notified for both of those infractions, or is it only a major infraction that they are sent a letter?
You mean the label?
Yeah, for the labeling issue.
For the labeling issues, and you will be notified even tasks or you have something you need to improve, so that you will be notified for any of those categories.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had. Thanks.
Okay. Are there any questions from advisory council members for Sue? If not, thank you for presenting. I'll see you in the office. Next on the agenda is our licensing statistical overview. We have Avra Wallace-Scholl, our lead household mover analyst, to present that for us. Take it away, Avra.
Hi, my name is Avra Wallace-Scholl, and I will be reporting the licensing statistics for Bureau of Electronic and Appliance Repair, Home Furnishings and Thermal Installation, and Household Movers through December 31st of 2020. So to start with, we're doing electronic and appliance repair. Total registrations for appliance service dealers was 2,541. Total registrations for electronic service dealers were 3,891. Combination of electronic and appliance service dealers is 428. Service contract administrators is 61. Service contract sellers is 12,021. So we have a total of electronic and appliance registrations is 18,942. Moving on to home furnishings and thermal installation. Our total licenses for furniture retailers is 1,999. Bedding retailers is 2,177. Furniture and bedding retailers is 10,885. Custom upholsterers is 440. Supply dealers is 87. Importers, which include overseas manufacturers, is 5,615. Manufacturers are 1,359. Sanitizers are 25. Wholesalers are 170. Thermal installation manufacturers are 109. So we have a total of home furnishings and thermal installation licenses of 22,866. Our household movers permits for 2020 through 2021 fiscal year is 76 permits issued. We administered 118 exams. and our exam pass rate was 89%. We have a total active household mover permits of 1,037. I'm going to go over our total quarterly revenue now, but I do want to point out we have a typo on the second line, April through June 2020. The number of permits, the number of actual permits was 1,063, and our net administration fees for that year, for that quarter was $665,502.56. So to go over it, January through March 2020, we had 1,030 permits, and our net administration fees was $653,524. Again, April through June was 1,063 permits with a net net fees with admin fees $665,502.56. July through September 2020 is 996 permits with net including admin fees $800.62. October through December 2020, again, this is through December 31st, 106 permits with a total of $55,608.91. I have a couple of other comments regarding household movers and the exam. So as of September 21st, 2020, the Bureau, using our vendor PSI Testing Center, has moved to 100% computer-based testing. The advantages to this include applicants have access to all of PSI's testing facilities that are 20 locations within California and 21 out-of-state locations. Applicants receive their pass-fail exam results immediately after completion of the exam. The household movers licensing team has immediate access to multiple PSI reports, which include but are not limited to the applicant's exam scores, scheduled exams, applicant no-shows, and exam statistics. And with this easily obtained information, the Bureau can manage the status of the applicant's exam in a timely manner. So do I have any questions?
Yes, Steve Whiteycamp, California Moving and Storage. Could we please get the corrected table sent out to us? It's kind of hard for me bouncing back and forth. I thought we were going to have our tables shown up on the screen when we did, so I'm trying to bounce back and forth. If you would send us the corrected household good table, I'd appreciate it. And also want to compliment the Bureau on the improved testing process.
Yes,
Thanks,
I can go
Steve.
ahead and send those over to you once I go back to my desk.
Thank you.
And this is Fauna. We will send an updated table to the entire advisory council.
Oh, okay. Are there any other questions?
All right, thank you, Avra. Next up, we have
thank you.
Next up, we have Kelly Williams, Compliance Manager, to go over consumer complaints. Kelly, are you there? Okay, we will wait on Kelly.
Kelly, this is the moderator. If you are speaking, you are muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Okay. My name is Kelly Williams. I'm the Compliance Manager, and I'll be sharing the Bureau Consumer Complaint Statistics with you, and I'll also touch on the Bureau Enforcement Statistics as well. For consumer complaints, the total of electronic and appliance repair, or EAR, and home furnishings and thermal insulation, or HEFTI, complaints received and closed for the first 6 months of the current fiscal year is almost equivalent to the entire last fiscal year. For the fiscal year of 1920, the Bureau received 531 EAR complaints and 319 HEFTI complaints for a total of 850 complaints. As of December 31st, 2020, the Bureau received 567 EAR complaints and 249 HEFTI complaints for a total of 816 complaints. For the fiscal year of 1920, the Bureau closed 419 EAR complaints and 267 HEFTI complaints for a total of 686 complaints. As of December 31st, 2020, the Bureau closed 485 EAR complaints and 191 HEFTI complaints for a total of 676 complaints. Some of the issues driving the increase in complaints include we continue to see an increase in complaints for items purchased online. With the pandemic, online shopping has increased. We're receiving a lot of complaints from consumers who have purchased items like furniture and major appliances but have not received the items due to supply chain logistics related to the pandemic. In January 2020, the Bureau's jurisdiction over service contracts expanded from service contracts related to items we regulate to virtually all service contracts. For this fiscal year, service contract complaints are over 30% of our jurisdictional complaints. In January 2020, the Bureau changed its name from Bear HEFTI, which is the Bureau of Electronic and Appliance Repair, Home Furnishings, and Thermal Insulation, to the Bureau of Household Goods and Services. The term household goods and services has led some consumers to believe our Bureau handles complaints for all consumer goods and services. We are actively working to update the Bureau of Household Goods and Services website to clearly show the types of complaints we handle. Does anybody have questions on the consumer complaint statistics? Okay. So next, Winston Luong will provide some household mover statistics.
Winston? Kelly, can you cover?
Yeah, I'm checking. Yeah, I can cover actually the household movers too. I think Winston's having some technical difficulties with his phone.
This is the moderator. I apologize, was unaware Winston needed to be promoted. He has been promoted.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, good morning. My name is Winston, and I'm with the compliance unit, and I will be sharing the complaint stats for household movers. Between July 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020, the compliance unit received 252 complaints and closed 237. Below, you will see two graphs that illustrates the number of complaints received by the total complaints by category and the number of complaints received by the month. For the graph, the total complaints by category, you can see that there were 131 unlicensed complaints, 55 hold hostages, 33 loss and or damage complaints, 13 overcharge complaints, 8 delivery complaints, 8 miscellaneous complaints, 2 refund complaints, 1 interstate complaint, and 1 restoration complaint. For the graph, the complaints received by months, in July, we received 25 unlicensed complaints and 8 licensed complaints. In August, we received 30 unlicensed complaints and 11 license complaints. In September, there were 28 unlicensed complaints and 12 licensed complaints. In October, there were 37 unlicensed complaints and 16 licensed complaints. In November, there were 31 unlicensed complaints and 16 licensed complaints. And in December, there were 25 unlicensed complaints and 13 licensed complaints. Are there any questions? If not, Kelly Williams will share on the enforcement and investigation statistics. Thank you.
Thank you, Winston.
Hello. Hi, this is Kelly Williams again. The first statistic I'd like to discuss is the telephone disconnects. When the Bureau has exhausted all efforts to educate and assist unlicensed businesses or businesses that have a delinquent license in becoming licensed, the Bureau has legal authority to request that the California Public Utility Commission order the advertised business telephone numbers to be disconnected. We refer to this action as telephone disconnects. The Bureau received direction to temporarily suspend the telephone disconnects. Under the household mover applicant investigations, while household mover applicant investigations and subsequent arrests are not related to the EAR and hefty information that I'm reporting on, I want to point out this data because the investigations have had a significant impact on the compliance unit. Applicants who have a criminal past are required to disclose it on their application. On the EAR and hefty applications, applicants self-attest to their past by checking a yes or no box on the application. Our licensing team also does a review of the Megan's Law website to underwrite for registered sex offenders. Under the household mover applications, applicants are required to submit fingerprints, which are run through a Department of Justice database. If there's any criminal activity, the Bureau receives an applicant criminal background summary from the Department of Justice showing the applicant's past criminal history. The Bureau also receives notice anytime a licensee or applicant has subsequent criminal activity. Applicant investigations have increased from 8 for the first year our Bureau took over the household mover program to 70 for the prior fiscal year and 43 for the first half of this year. This increase can also be attributed to the Bureau's success in helping unlicensed movers become compliant with licensing requirements. The last two areas I want to touch on are internal case investigations. Internal case investigations generally result in an offshoot of a complaint. For example, we may receive a complaint against a business and then identify the business has multiple unlicensed locations or that illegal activity cited in the complaint is occurring at multiple locations. As each location requires a separate license, one complaint could result in additional internal investigations. The Bureau's investigations dipped from April through June 2020 due to the shutdown. This had an impact on the number of investigations for the last fiscal year. For the current fiscal year, investigations have picked up and we are on track to meet levels consistent with the fiscal year of 2018-19. This fiscal year, we have opened a total of 270 EAR and hefty investigations and closed a total of 246 EAR and hefty investigations. I also want to touch on citations. For this fiscal year, our field staff have issued 227 citations. In the next part of this presentation, Supervising Special Investigator Alda Aguirre will provide additional details on the citations. Does anybody have questions on what I have presented so far?
Yes, Kelly, Steve Whiteycamp. I still am confused with what that header means, investigations and subsequent arrests. I think that there's something incorrect there, or I just have trouble understanding that. It would lead me to believe that people's application process, we find they have criminality and they're arrested. And I know that's not what it means, but it just, are you tracking permit holders and then their arrests after they have the permits? What's the subsequent part? I'm a little confused there.
Yeah. So far, yeah. So on a subsequent arrest report would be for a permit holder who applies and then later is subsequently arrested. To my knowledge, we've only had one so far where we had an applicant who did have a criminal history. And during the underwriting process, he was rearrested.
Okay.
And some of these are minor arrests. They're not necessarily it could be something as such as like a DUI or something like that. But that is what the subsequent arrest report is.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Alda will be discussing the statistics more in depth in her presentation.
Are there any more questions for Kelly? All right, thank you, Kelly and Winston. Next up, we have Alda Geary, Supervising Special Investigator. She's going to go over field activity. Take it away, Alda.
Thank you, Fauna. Thank you, Kelly. So hello, my name is Alda Geary. I'm the Supervising Special Investigator for Southern California, and I will be reporting on the enforcement and investigation activity for July 1, 2020 through December 31st of 2020. But before I go over the data, I'd like to begin by addressing how COVID-19 has impacted our operations. To protect the health and safety of Bureau staff and the public, at the direction of the Department of Consumer Affairs, the Bureau suspended field operations on March 16th of 2020. Now, field operations include inspections, surveillance, sweep operations, citations, and furniture sample pickups. In May, the Bureau proposed a COVID-19 field operation plan to the Department of Consumer Affairs. This operations plan outlined how the investigation staff would safely re-enter the field to conduct essential enforcement functions. In June, the COVID-19 field operations plan was implemented. Investigation staff re-entered the field with personal protective equipment and COVID-19 field operations procedures to conduct the following essential enforcement functions. So these were visits to contact unlicensed businesses, visits to issue citations, storefront visits to investigate complaints, no contact visits, for example, verifying a location and conducting surveillance, and sample pickups. As a part of an overall coordinated effort to provide support to counties on the county monitoring list, the state brought together its enforcement and regulatory agencies to partner with local agencies to assist in the education, communication, outreach, and enforcement of guidance related to numerous business sectors. This partnership is the COVID-19 Task Force. In July, the Bureau of Household Goods investigation staff became one of 4 programs included in that task force. In addition to our normal inspections and investigation functions, we are required to determine compliance with the state safety requirements. The requirements documented during our visits are things like face coverings, for example, face coverings in use by employees at these businesses and face coverings in use by the public. Also, there is documentation of physical distancing. For example, employees and patrons are physically distancing, that there are physical barriers used to separate people with things like plexiglass, and that there are visual guides, like prominent visual guides to guide patrons to physically distance, visual guides instructing patrons to wear face coverings, and occupancy limitations posted. This activity is tracked and reported to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs on a daily basis. Despite the COVID-19 restrictions, the Bureau has continued to meet our mission to protect and serve consumers while ensuring a fair and competitive marketplace. So now I'm going to go over the enforcement activity. And before I go over the data, I want to provide some definitions and explanations of the columns. So on our first column, it's unlicensed contact. And these are contacts made to obtain compliance from those operating without a valid permit or license. And these are the types of contacts, that can include calls, letters, emails, visits, and can even include multiple contacts to the same business in an effort to get them to comply. The next column is unlicensed citations, and this lists citations that were issued to those operating without a permit or license. The next column is investigative visits, and these are field visits conducted during the course of an investigation to obtain evidence and include things like surveillance, obtaining records, conducting interviews, verifying addresses, capturing photos, identifying business owners, and making contact with business owners or operators. The next column is cases assigned. Now, cases assigned are cases that are assigned to the investigations unit received as a consumer complaint or a tip. The next column is hold hostage cases. As someone mentioned earlier, these are cases that are identified as hold hostage because a consumer's goods are being held while the business is asking for money in exchange for the release of their belongings. The next column is hold hostage resolved, goods returns, and this is the column that reflects the hold hostage cases that were resolved. The next column is C and D letters sent, and these are letters that are sent by the Bureau to cease operations to the businesses that are operating illegally. So now I'm going to go over the totals for household mover enforcement activity data for July 1st through December 31st of 2020. So for unlicensed contacts, we had 368 for household movers. For unlicensed citations, we had 20. For investigative visits, we had 133. For cases assigned, we had 104. For hold hostage assigned, we had 79. For hold hostage resolved and goods returned, we had 46. For CD letters sent out, or cease operation letters sent out, we had 71. Now I'm going to go over the electronic and appliance repair enforcement activity, but I'd like to explain an additional column, and that column is for licensed first visits. And this column lists first visits that were conducted to new licensees where education was provided on the laws and regulations. So for electronic and appliance repair, for unlicensed contacts, we had 240. For unlicensed citations, we had 71. For investigative visits, we had 156. For licensed first visits, we had 23. For cases assigned, we had 73. And for cease operations letters, we had 54. Now I'm going to go into the home furnishings and thermal insulation. And in this data, there's also an additional column. And that column is for lab samples obtained. And that reflects samples obtained of upholstered products, bedding, and or mattresses on behalf of the lab for testing purposes. These are samples procured and tested by the Bureau. So for home furnishings and thermal insulation data, it's as follows. For unlicensed contacts, we had 294. For unlicensed citations, we had 156. For investigative visits, we had 146. For licensed first visits, we had 9. For cases assigned, we had 56. For lab samples obtained, we had 38. And for cease operation letters, we had 32. This concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Yes, Alda, Steve Whiteycamp. First of all, I can't let one of these meetings go without complimenting your team and the whole Bureau on what you guys have done on the hold hostage situation. And it is to be commended, and it's very special and greatly appreciated by us and by the consumers that you help. So that is something that's really spectacular. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
But you're welcome. My question is there seems to be a big disparity between contact of unlicensed and citation of unlicensed, particularly when compared to the other groups in the Bureau. Why is ours so dramatically below the averages?
Well, my answer to that is that the biggest difference between household movers and the other programs is that the other programs have regulations in place. So for household movers, we are still waiting for approval for our current regulations. And that is what keeps us from issuing more citations. I think Fauna could probably provide more information on that.
Yeah, the rulemaking proposal is still going through review. So until we get that proposal adopted, we have to work with the tools we have. So we are constantly looking for other strategies to enforce, but citations will go up exponentially once we have approved regulations.
Okay. So one other question enforcement-wise is, well, frequently we have members contact us. We contact the Bureau with and advise them of unlicensed activity. And on occasion, we've been asked, can you provide a consumer that's been damaged? And while we're at times able to do that, my reading of the code doesn't, that, you know, the violation is the mere representing yourself as a mover, not even providing the service. So I'm a little bit kind of in wonder about why that is needed. I guess maybe this is an offline discussion, but yeah.
I can answer that question. It's not that it's needed, because a business is operating unlicensed when they are operating and they don't have a valid permit or license in place. However, when we are gathering evidence during our investigation, it does assist us to have a consumer or a victim, because even though we are not able to issue as many citations as we would like, we are working with local law enforcement, and that includes district attorney's offices, with providing reports and evidence that we've gathered during our investigation so that they can pursue matters also.
Well, thank you very much. And as I also sit on a committee that's working with the FMCSA, and I'll tell you that you guys are a shining star example of the way things can be. So we are much appreciative of your efforts.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Alda or about the statistics in general, any of them from advisory council members? Okay, none. Moderator, we were going to open up. Okay.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the council, I am opening the Q&A panel. If you would like to make...
So we're going to open up all the agenda items up to this point.
Yes. So
go ahead.
If you would like to make a comment in regards to agenda items 3 through 6, Please reference the instructions displayed on your screen now by clicking on the question mark within the square in the lower right-hand portion of your screen and type, "I would like to make a comment." All commenters will be allotted 3 minutes and provided a 15-second warning. I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, we've received no requests for agenda items 3 through 6. Would you like me to go ahead and close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
Thank you. We are going to move on to agenda item 7, House of Representatives Bill 133, the COVID-19 Regulatory Relief and Safety Act. Diana Godinez, our policy manager, is going to present this.
Hello, this is Diana. I am here to discuss Federal Bill HR 133, COVID-19 Regulatory and Work from Home Safety Act. The bill was signed into law on December 27th, 2020, and will become effective within 100 days from enactment. The Act adopts the Bureau's flammability standard for upholstered furniture, Technical Bulletin 117/2013, as a national flammability standard to be administered by the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. The Act also establishes a new label requirement which manufacturers are required to use to certify that their products complies with the federal standard. The new federal requirement does not change how the Bureau currently administers TB 117/2013 in California, nor does it change the Bureau's current labeling requirements. The Bureau will continue to require the flammability label as required by California Code of Regulations, Section 1374.3. This means all products sold or offered for sale in California must have both labels attached to products that are subject to 117/2013. The Bureau will accept the placement of the federal statement beneath the Bureau's flammability label. Although this is acceptable to the Bureau, industry will need to confirm whether this is also acceptable to CSC or whether a standalone label will be required. Bureau has no authority over the federal label. Therefore, any questions about the label and any potential formatting requirements should be addressed to CPSC. Please ensure all formatting specifications for the Bureau's flammability label are still met as specified in Section 1370. The Bureau has received many questions from industry on whether we will replace our flammability label with the federal label. We will be making that consideration once federal regulations are adopted and definitive language is in place showing how the standard and label will be administered. If we move forward with this, the Bureau will be required to amend existing regulations before it can be implemented. This comes at an opportune time since the Bureau is already in the process of updating existing label requirements. However, keep in mind that the rulemaking process could take around 2 years to finalize. In regards to the labels and other failures, I have been reviewing all minor and moderate failures that we are seeing and have added clarifying language and examples in the proposed regulations where I can. Many of those failures that are noticed are already addressed in the FAQ that is available on our website. We will see what other methods we can use to bring more attention to the FAQ and to provide more education in these areas. Have any questions?
Hi, this is Fauna. Advisory Council member Don Lucas lost his connection, so he's trying to get back on. So if if he comes back on, I'm going to give him the opportunity to ask any questions about this. But if any other advisory council members do right now, now would be the time. Okay. Thank you, Diana. How's everybody holding up? We're almost done. Okay. The last agenda item
This is the moderator. Yafana, this is the moderator. Would you like to open this agenda item for public comment?
Yes, please. Sorry about that.
No worries. This is the moderator, and at the direction of the council, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the question mark within the square in the lower right-hand portion of your screen and type, "I would like to make a public comment." I will pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, we've received no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
I apologize. We do have an individual wishing to make a public comment. An individual identified as Seth Fernandez. You will be provided 3 minutes and given a 15-second warning. With that, your microphone has been unmuted.
Hey, I wanted to know if the CPSC has said when they're going to publish guidance or anything with the TB 117 on the federal level. That's all that I wanted to know.
Hi, this is Yafana Lamar. The CPSC has issued a notice. They issued it yesterday, a notice of proposed language. We haven't had time to look at it. It came very late and we are prepping for this meeting, so we can't answer any questions about its contents, but it is out there.
The feature is officially closed.
Thank you, Brittany. Okay, now back to the agenda. The final agenda item is going to be presented by me. The Bureau executed a memorandum of agreement with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration in October of 2020. The MOA allows the Bureau access to all of the federal database, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or FMCSA, all of their databases, which will help our investigators research any case, whether intrastate or interstate. The MOA also authorizes the Bureau to enforce federal law pertaining to household movers performing interstate movers coming to or leaving California. The MOA allows the Bureau to retain any fines collected as a result of Bureau enforcement, so fees from California's permit holders will not go towards this enforcement effort. To implement the MOA, the FMCSA has worked with the Bureau to train our investigators on the laws they will be enforcing, to set up access to the databases, and train investigators and managers on how to use the databases. About half of our investigators have completed the training process, and the other half will complete it in April or May. On Monday, Rick Vellucci, Supervising Special Investigator 2, and I have a meet and greet with our counterparts in Texas, which is the Texas DMV, the FMCSA California Division, the FMCSA Texas Division, and the FMCSA headquarters in Washington, D.C., to discuss how we can all work together to create an overall stronger enforcement programs for household movers. We are very excited to have partnered with the FMCSA and add access to their databases, as well as enforcement of federal laws to our enforcement toolbox. That toolbox already includes enforcing state law and pursuing criminal action, all with the goal of reducing fraud and consumer harm resulting from unscrupulous movers, as well as target those operating in the underground economy to level the playing field for law-abiding movers. Are there any questions about the MOA?
I want to compliment the Bureau on their engagement with the MOA. I think it's a good step. I hope and I know that it's a good step for you to meet with the Texas DMV. They've done a good job as well. I hope that the two cultures of the Bureau and Tex DMV have a positive impact on the FMCSA and not the other way around. So I hope you just maintain your own culture and your own standards and take advantage of whatever benefits you can garner from the relationship.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions or comments about the memorandum of agreement? If not, we are done with the agenda. We just have to discuss future meeting dates and we will be finished.
Yep, Autumn. This is the moderator again. Would you like to take public comment for agenda item number 8?
Yes, please.
At the direction of the council, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen and type "I would like to make a public comment." All comments will be addressed in the order they are received. I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, it does not appear we've received any requests for public comments. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
Okay, so moving on to future meeting dates, we usually try to have a meeting in late summer. Are there any times that advisory council members would prefer, or are there any times that are out of the question? We usually do Thursdays, and so whichever is most beneficial, maybe late July through late August are options.
I would propose August 19th.
That works. I think this is Heidi. I think that later in August in the summer would be better chances that we could even do it in person.
This is Pascal Beniamini. If I can propose a week later than the 26th, if possible.
That would work for me as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Works for me.
Any other advisory council members have preferences or asks?
This is Dan Rhodes. As of now, I'm available on that day.
Okay. So barring any other input, we will tentatively schedule it for August 26th. It would be nice if we could meet in person. I will keep you all updated on any developments in that arena. Is there anything else from advisory council members before we adjourn?
Thank you.
Thank you, Fauna,
okay.
very much.
Well, thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you later.
Congratulations on a successful first meeting. Great job.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. I will see you all soon.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.